Thank you everyone for joining another real estate investment club. This is Wednesday 7th, I think it's 26th of August. And we have a special guest today. Every week we invite a special guest to talk to us regarding different things in the world of real estate investment that I'm passionate about. My name is Ashton Ekbatani, working in this field for the last 16 years as a real estate investor, real estate agent. I go through all different kind of things every single day or every single week. I'm passionate about talking to individuals regarding investment, stop them from pitfalls that I can see right in front of them, and help them and hold their hands and walk with them through different stage of real estate investment. As the beginning of every other session that we have, I'm going to go through my intro, and then I'm going to ask our special guest today to take over the screen. Now, the goal of this real estate investment club or webinar here is to help you to move from what we call average investor to a savvy investor. So any wind blows you to the right and left would not apply to you once you become savvy investor. And you don't pass through the door to become savvy investor. It's a gradual process that you have to go through of learning and experiencing different things. Now, a little bit of real estate market activity right now as we speak in the month of August. Of course, we are looking at the month before, but I'm checking the news every day and comparing with the reality that we are experiencing as a pro in this field. For instance, this new news I pulled out today said the Hamilton real estate market remains as alluring ever. Of course, for the last 10, 15 years, the city of Hamilton is trying to revive the city and attract a lot of people. They've done different projects to attract mostly investors. Now, one thing rules, and that's a price. If everywhere else in GTA the price is high, guess what's going to happen to Hamilton if the price in Hamilton is lower? Of course, everybody would go there. And thanks to many builders that are moving around Hamilton, we're not talking about necessarily downtown Hamilton, where we see some condominiums came up, but also like Grimsby, some other area in Hamilton, and even going as far as Brantford. We see is coming up big time, and don't think the price is super cheap. The price is slowly catching up with us, and that's about Hamilton. So of course it's alluring. But when you go to Hamilton as an investor, you have to really watch and cherry picking your deals, because they are not all sweet deals. Now, another news, Toronto real estate market is headed for a cliff. Well, how do we know that? On the bottom said Toronto real estate prices are heading for a cliff. The condo market will drag it further down, according to CMHC. Well, I start doubting whether CMHC is throwing a news here, because a few months ago, to be precise, May 21st, CMHC was predicting what's coming out. It said up to 18% drop in home prices, and that was May 21st. Oh, surprise, surprise, surprise. The price went up, I think 9.5%. So I don't know what CMHC is looking at. And going back here, there is a reality here that I can see, and I agree. And on the very bottom said anticipated increase in the supply of condominium apartment will head to softening prices next year. Now here it said softening prices. It didn't say heading for a cliff. So these are two different things. Now, to be honest with you, looking at the prices of the condominium, I have not seen softening prices. As a matter of fact, the prices went up, even with condominium, however, because of the amount of inventory the condo owners they have, builders. What I see as a flexibility, I see incentives popping up. For instance, pay only 5% per year. Closing on 2024 occupancy, you can pay 5% this year, 5% next year. I've never seen that before. Or we give you free locker. Those kind of incentives is coming, and it's there already. But changing of the prices, going lowball, or the market is crashing for condominium, I don't see that right now as we speak. The price continue going up. So here, Toronto Real Estate Board said Toronto condo market experiencing declines, yet prices still rising. I 100% agree with that. And this is not my only sources that I'm using. I'm using other resources that I encourage you to have access to as well. This is what I shared with some of the audience last week. It remains the same because that's reflecting the month of July. And this is regarding home prices. Actually, this screen you see is a new listing. So that new listing is helping the market to balance compared to a few months prior. That was a buyer market, means we didn't have much inventory. If you look at the month of April and May, you see the inventory was low. Therefore, we had multiple offers at that end. Now here is the ratio of what, or absorption of what comes to the market and what sells. If the orange line in July 2020 was far low, that means nothing's selling. But look, it's 60%. So the house, anything comes to the market, sells. Now look at the, now this is what, if you're curious about the prices, here's the screen that you have to look at. Average resale price, home prices. Look at the reality. That's the stat. 2020, July, the price went up. So this is what I'm relying. And as I said, this is Toronto Real Estate Board, and this is not my only resources for checking if price is going up in comparison with the media. Media is always going different directions for different purposes, but I strongly suggest you to stand on the facts. Now, this is average selling price, July 2019 to 2020. You see the price went up 16.9%, and even seasonally, up 5.5%. So you're on the right track to have the prices increased. Now, please do not generalize this. This might not apply to Manitoba, for instance. This is only referring to Toronto, GTA. Now, as usual, I share with you where to go, what to learn, learning tools and materials. I always share this one with you. If you want to go to my YouTube, please subscribe to my videos. There are more than 100 videos there, educational videos for the real estate investment and different topics in this regard. You can also go to my Facebook for investors. You can go and become a member, click there, and I'm here and there putting some information about real estate investment. These are a few of the books that I published in the past. You can go to Amazon.com and grab some of them. And voila, our special guest today is Jay Gobrani. Am I pronouncing your last name correctly?
You got it. Yep.
Perfect. It's funny how we met. Actually, we never met face to face. One day, hopefully, we can do that. But I had a property for sale and sold in Oakville. One of my investors was selling it, and that's where we start having some conversation with Jay, and the rest is history. Jay is a founder of Prepared Fathers, and I invited Jay to come over and share with us. I know he's an investor. He's doing it for many, many years. I want Jay to come up and start sharing his story with us. I think it's an interesting story you like to hear. So Jay, the platform is all yours. You want me to share the screen with you?
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay, let me try to see if I can do that. Okay, I think you're on.
Okay, let's just take a look right here and share.
Mm-hmm.
All right, can you just let me know that you see the title page?
Yeah, I see everything.
Awesome, that's great. Well, thanks very much, Ashton. It's great to be with you and your group. Really helpful stats. And yeah, I just want to add, like when people are looking to become savvy investors, which I think is a great goal, when it comes to media, it's always good to look past the headlines, right? The media's job is to get your attention. It's to attract eyeballs. It's to sell newspapers, etc. But yeah, real savvy investors, you know, I'm sure we do our best to look behind kind of the curtain and really dig in the facts. So I think those are really helpful for people. So today's presentation, folks, being prepared with wills and insurance before you need them. And as real estate investors, I mean, like, I think a lot of you will appreciate and probably resonate with my story and what I'm about to share with you right now, but it's certainly important. So I figured let's just get right into it. So why this presentation? So certainly as we grow our assets and we grow our portfolio, it's not only one thing about growing it, it's really important to understand how we can protect and preserve what we are already built and what we are going to be building. So this presentation, I'm hoping to give you some ideas about how you can go about protecting and preserving your portfolio. Okay, so overview, we'll talk a little bit about my real estate journey. Again, everyone's a real estate investor, so I'm sure you'll hopefully pick up some lessons about the real estate journey. We're going to talk about wills and POAs, which are powers of attorney. And then we'll talk about some insurance requirements. Okay, so a little context for you. Definitely, educated as CA, went to the University of Waterloo, but I'd always promised my parents, Ashton, that I'd never work for anyone after 25. So I left the accounting world back in 1996, the day before my 25th birthday, and simply have been in business ever since. Here's an example of my first business. It was a franchise cafe restaurant, Williams Coffee Pub. Did like $1 million a year in sales, lots of employees and people. Since then, been on my own as an entrepreneur since 1996, several other businesses that basically I've done over that time. But really the part of my journey that I really want to share more is my real estate journey. And the real estate journey is certainly one that has brought me the most economic benefit over and above any of the businesses which I've done. So we'll talk about the real estate. So basically, here's how I got into it. All right. So just like many people on this call, my reason was when my first child was born. All right. This is a picture of my son, Jaden. He was born in August 2005. Before that, no real estate whatsoever. Yeah, lots of business stuff, but none whatsoever. But that certainly created kind of like a burning desire. I wanted to figure out, well, now I have this little person in my hands. How am I going to take care of him? So Ashton, it led me down a journey of, reading lots, 150. Back in 2005, internet still wasn't as strong. So a lot of books, did a lot of reading, not so much podcasts and stuff. I settled on real estate after all my research as the asset class I wanted to use to secure my family's financial future. And for those of you on the call who maybe are just sitting on the fence and looking to get started, then I will encourage you, in order to score a goal in hockey, you must shoot the puck. So it's one of those things where I realized, okay, I have to shoot the puck. So I jumped in full-fledged back in 2007, 2008. I jumped in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, which was a super hot market. Oil prices were going through the roof, $130, $140 a barrel. But unfortunately, my timing was absolutely horrible. I basically bought right at the top of the market, and the credit crisis hit. So if you can see, I made a couple of purchases, townhouses in Edmonton, bad mortgages. I was paying, look at that, 6.25%. And when you look at rates these days, people are wondering how in the world rates were even that high back then, but they certainly were. Negative cash flow. I bought at the top. See, properties were going up $4,000 to $5,000 a month, and I had that fear of missing out. I was like, oh my goodness, I had been watching this market for 12 months, and it just kept going up and up and up. And I said, if I don't jump in, I'm going to miss out. Well, yes, I unfortunately waited at the wrong time, and I jumped in at the wrong time. Absolutely. So things which I were buying, townhouses I was buying at $275,000, they basically, it seemed like overnight, but it was about 6 months later, they went to under $200,000. So
and Jay, you were living in Toronto at that time, right?
Yes, I was not investing in Toronto as of yet,
okay.
But living in Toronto, investing there. So yeah, long distance investing certainly has its own challenges. If you do not have great management folks, I will certainly encourage you not to do it. I'd rather you invest, within an hour's drive of your house. Now this was my first real experience of negativity economically, right? Like this was a very stressful time. So it affected my business, very stressful. How do I face my joint venture partners? What do I do now? Certainly there was like a mindset of like, I felt pretty stuck. And then when you add on top 2 new additions to the family, 2 daughters, Serena and Angelica were born 2007, 2009. So you have all of these things happening. You have a growing family with growing expenses, and you have a business which got affected by the credit crisis, and a real estate portfolio which was negatively affected by a credit crisis. So I just, I had to really settle back and think, okay, I'm going to keep going because I still believe in real estate, even though my first experience was not very good. And this was a life-changing book for me, Acres of Diamonds. And basically the gist of this book was there's an acre of diamonds right in your own backyard. And at the time I was living in Oakville. I've been living in Oakville since 2006. And weirdly enough, I had never really considered Oakville for investment, but I changed that after reading this book. And I really dug in. So for those of you who might be having a little challenge on real estate, I think these next few slides are going to be very, very important. Okay. So golden rule of real estate, which I broke when I was investing in Edmonton, is very simple. House prices are opinions. Positive cash flow from the rentals is a fact. Just get the facts. Okay. So every property, make sure it's positive cash flow at a very minimum, so that, you know, you are protected on a monthly basis. When you're feeding a property negatively, you know, some of those condo investors in Toronto, I'm sure they're going through this right now. It's not very, very good, right? So it's actually, it's pretty tough to deal with on a monthly basis. So definitely look for positive cash flow in any property you're going to do for buy and hold, and just get that positive cash flow. So now, we said I changed my focus. So the focus switched to Oakville. So now this is my project binder, my real estate project binder, because Ashton, when I was in Edmonton, after I made those investments, I actually ran out of money. Okay. So I needed to bring in joint venture partners eventually in order to keep investing. So I had to show my joint venture partners that, okay, not only was the bad experience in Edmonton still relevant, that I learned from it, I also had to show them what are the future prospects of Oakville. This was back in 2010, right after kind of the credit crisis hit. So you might be asking, what are things that I put in this binder, right? What were the kind of research? Well, here is a map. This map is a little area of 1 kilometer by 2 kilometers squared. Okay, the borders of it are 3rd line, 4th line, Rebecca and Bridge Road, or Spears Road. This is the area I focused on and invested in. So that's like lesson number 1 for real estate here for me is, if you're going to invest, folks, I would prefer, especially at the beginning, you focus on one area. All right. It makes it a lot easier. You can say no to all these other different opportunities that keep coming your way. And eventually you just become an expert in this area. So this particular rectangle, Ashton, all of my future properties, which I bought, they were all in this rectangle. I knew this area pretty well better than anybody else. I knew all the prices. I knew like kind of all of the sale prices, the tenant profile, the buyer profiles, etc. The one good thing about that area is it was gentrifying, a very powerful force for future real estate appreciation. These bungalows, that's what was in this area, was mainly bungalows, 50 to 70 years old. These bungalows are all being torn down, and still to this day, they're being torn down and put into big houses, 32, 3,500 square foot executive homes. So not only did I focus on an area, folks, I focused on a certain type of property. All of the properties were 3-bedroom bungalows, which are on 60 by 120 foot lots. That's what I invested in, and I rented them out long-term to families. So when you think of the strategy, it was really easy for me. When someone brought me something from North Oakville, I just said no. If someone brought me something, any project whatsoever outside of Oakville, it was easy for me. Just said no. And I think that a lot of people, they get caught up in evaluating things from maybe Brantford, Hamilton, Barrie, and they get overwhelmed with the amount of information. By simplifying and focusing on one area and just making it one property type, things get a lot easier, a lot cleaner, and a lot simpler. So I basically had to bring in joint venture partners. So once again, there was a binder which I was able to show them. I showed them the focused area. I was always grabbing the realtor reports that were getting sent out in the mail. I was collecting those, putting them in my binder to show people, look, I keep track of the prices. Here's price lists. There's a couple of properties on here that I still own. And these are prices from back in 2009, 2010. Okay, wow. So I don't know if you can see them. They're in the high 300s, low 400s. So I was tracking everything and I was really into it. I could answer people's questions. I could drive them around the area, potential partners, and I could show them what's going on. And it's great when they can see it with their own eyes. So ultimately, this was kind of how I worked it. You see this little blue box? That's my initials. All of the things underneath it, looking after arranging the properties, looking after the properties, managing the whole asset, managing the managers, the property manager, etc., dealing with all of the accountants, lawyers, appraisers, etc. That was me up in the blue box. And if you look up here to the left of the blue box, those were my partners. Usually my partners, they lacked maybe some combination of the time, the expertise, the inclination to invest in real estate. However, they were able to go on mortgages and they had money available for all the down payments, and we partnered, right? So there was always a give and take. There was always a win-win scenario. And if you ask any of them to this day, they're exceptionally happy that they did. This you can see, if you look at the date down at the bottom of this little mind map, this was done in 2010, right? So that's how I visualized it. And that's eventually how it all worked out. So what this all led to, pretty simple. We purchased multiple properties in this targeted area only. The cost basis was just under $2 million. And ultimately over the last 10 years or so, these properties have pretty well tripled in price. So certainly the best financial decision I have ever made, and over more than any other business which I've ever done. Real estate has brought me a certain level of wealth and comfort and the ability to have time freedom. So I would encourage people, any of you sitting on the fence, any of you doubting the value of real estate, if you do some really good research and focus on a good area and a good property type, and B, you focus on cash flowing properties, and C, and I think this is important, if you have a long-term outlook, I think your chances of success are greatly, greatly enhanced. Because in the short term, in any 1 year, back when the foreign buyer's tax got introduced, or back when they introduced the mortgage stress test, in any 1 year, sure, properties can go down, a market can go down. But if you have like a 20-year outlook, it's been proven that over 20-year time periods, real estate goes up in value. So I think that's one of those mitigating factors, that if you have a long-term outlook, then real estate is a fantastic investment. So that's what I want people to see. And, you'll see how my real estate portfolio kind of came in handy. So, there's always kind of unexpected events in life, and it's going to tie into what we're going to talk about tonight with wills and with insurance, etc. So, there's always unexpected events in life that change everything. And yeah, I unfortunately went through one of these. So, the most devastating day of my life, back in 2014, this is my wife. My wife, she suddenly and unexpectedly passed away. So overnight, I became a single father of 3 kids at the time. They were 5, 7, and 9. So, needless to say that, everything else just didn't matter anymore, right? Outside of my kids. So, I ended up taking a 4-year sabbatical, basically all the way up until about 2018. So let's talk about some of the things about being prepared, right? So in one aspect, I was very well prepared. In another aspect, I was not. So let me share those with you right now. And I think, again, very, very important that people just pay attention to this part of it, okay? Because again, we're all real estate investors, so this is going to become very relevant to us, right? So certainly after she passed away, the journey had to continue, but certainly that was just, there's a picture of my 3 kids and I. That's a few years ago, but I explained to them, good things happen in life, bad things happen in life. The only thing we control is how we react to any of it. And as real estate investors, like, this was a life experience, which was devastating. But when I look back to the credit crisis, what I was going through in Edmonton, up until that point in my life, that was the most devastating thing that I was going through. But let's keep it all relative, right? So yes, there's going to be challenges when you're building a real estate portfolio. And as you go through life, and your ability to handle these challenges is what will determine whether you succeed or fail in the long run. So I certainly encourage people to understand challenges are just a part of the journey. If you somehow think that you're going to build a real estate portfolio without challenges, you're going to be sadly mistaken, and you're going to be gravely disappointed. So please understand the challenges are just part of it, and you have to be prepared. That's how you deal with challenges. So let's move into, that was the real estate journey. Let's move into the second part of the presentation, which is about wills and POAs. Okay, so again, there's really no other way to say this. All right, simply enough, if you have children and you have assets, and I assume most people at least have assets if they're real estate investors, you may not have kids yet, but if you have both of these, please, 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 you must have a will. All right. There's no other way for me to say it. You must have a will. And a will, what is it? It's just a summary of your wishes should something happen to you. Well, the something happening to you is if you pass away unfortunately or unexpectedly. All right. So you must have a will to protect your interests, to protect your family's interests, etc. So now, you know, my wife and I, this is something that we did do right. When my son was born back in 2005, one of the first phone calls I made was to my real estate lawyer, and we sat down and we got wills created. So it's one of the things that I was prepared for, and we did have wills. So wills, yeah, just continue. So two big advantages of a will. Number one, see, when someone passes away, the government, as they normally do in our everyday life, they want a piece of the estate, the leftover estate. So there's estate taxes that have to be paid. Some people call them probate taxes. If you have a will, then let's just say that the amount of tax that they're going to take has a much greater chance of being minimized legally than if you don't have a will. If you don't have a will, then you're leaving it in someone else's hands, right? A probate judge, an estate judge. And sometimes government, they want to put their hands in. So having a will protect against that. That's the first advantage of a will. The second advantage of a will is, you see, when you have a whole bunch of assets and you pass away, then sometimes while that will and while that estate, your estate is what's called in probate, your family doesn't necessarily have full control over your assets. But if you have a will, that whole estate and probate process goes a lot faster. So they will be able to retake or regain control of the assets much quicker than if you did not have a will. All right, so those are two big advantages of having a will. So now next question that comes up is, well, how do I create a will? All right, so there's two very simple ways. One is you just go to the professional, right? Go to a wills and estates lawyer, and he or she will lead you through the process. As real estate investors, I highly recommend option one. There are some people in the prepared fathers world who are not real estate investors. They're actually, sometimes they don't have a lot of assets yet, and there's budgetary concerns. Well, when there's budgetary concerns, then yes, you can go online, LegalZoom, createyourownwill.com, I believe is another one. There's some places that you can go to get templates. Now, if you do the template one and you choose to do it online yourself, I would still highly recommend you have a lawyer review it. You know, it might not, at least it won't cost as much, but you still need professional eyes on it to make sure that it's done properly so that it would stand up legally if, again, something happened to you. But once again, I highly recommend if you are a real estate investor that you go through number one and get a lawyer. So now, again, regardless of the method you choose, the one thing you're going to have before you really go through either one of these avenues is you need to have a written description and numerics beside all of your assets, all of your liabilities, right? All your properties, stocks, pensions, etc. And liability side, any mortgages, any leases, credit cards, etc. You're going to have a pretty reasonable idea of what everything is, because regardless of whichever method you choose, a lawyer, the first thing they're going to say to you is, once you say you want a will, they're going to say to you, okay, well, what do you own and what do you owe? So you're going to have all that. You might as well do that work a little bit ahead of time so that you're prepared. And the other thing you're going to need to do with a will is you're going to need to select an executor. All right. So what is an executor? An executor is simply the person responsible for carrying out the instructions in your will. Now, some people choose their spouse. In my case, yes, my wife and I were each other's executors. When she passed away, I had to carry out the wishes of her will. And trust me, Ashley, it made it a lot easier that we had a will. And that's given, please understand, again, I'm educated as a CA. I've been an entrepreneur and a real estate investor my entire adult life. You would think that if someone could handle this whole thing, I'd be able to handle it. But even with that background, I still found it difficult. So, there's an emotional thing that you're going through because someone close to you has passed away. But then the exact steps of being an executor, they're very detailed. You got to understand them. So please make sure that you're picking someone who you obviously have to trust. You have to trust them implicitly. Family members are great, but some family members are just not cut out for it. So, you know, be careful when you're selecting an executor. Some people pick a really close professional friend, like a lawyer, an accountant. That's fine. But again, you got to trust them implicitly that they will carry out your wishes. So you really need to know before you go who your executor is going to be. All right, so now from wills, let's go on to powers of attorney. So powers of attorney, what is a power of attorney? All right, it's necessary. Now, wills are important if you pass away. All right, so you pass away, at least your family is protected, your assets, you know, your wishes are known. The executor's job is to carry out your wishes. Hopefully you minimize your estate tax and you minimize the time it takes for your family to regain control. Now, a power of attorney, on the other hand, is not if you pass away. This is what happens if you become disabled, incapacitated, and you're not able to make rational decisions, right? Some people are incapacitated by health. Some people are incapacitated mentally. So there's situations where someone else has got to step in and act on your behalf. And that's what a power of attorney is. So the person named as your power of attorney, once you become incapacitated and disabled, that person is going to have the authority to make major decisions on your behalf. So again, pick wisely, pick carefully. When we talk about powers of attorney, there's two very specific types I want to point out to people. One is a financial power of attorney. All right, so all of your estate, all of your decisions when it comes to finances, especially if you own properties, etc., that person, power of attorney, will have power to make decisions, i.e. selling properties if you need to raise money, or what else have you inside the estate. So financially, that person will have decision-making control over your estate. The second one is a health power of attorney. Now, this definitely does not have to be the same person, okay? I know several people who have a different financial power of attorney, perhaps an accountant, or someone in their family who they can trust, who's a lot more, let's say, has an aptitude for numbers and understands what's going on. And then a health power of attorney, someone else totally different who really is into health and would understand your health wishes. So these can certainly be different people. And once again, you need them to be highly trustworthy, and they should have knowledge of your wishes beforehand, right? These sometimes, Ashton, are very difficult conversations to have, right? Some people are like, no, if I talk about it, it's bad luck, et cetera, et cetera. All I can tell you folks is if something happens and you don't have this level of preparation, I can tell you the amount of stress and pain that your family and you are going to go through is a hell of a lot worse than potentially having some upfront, really reasonable conversations. So you got to be clear with your wishes, and you have to be clear with who you would going to be willing to give decision-making authority to over these things like your health and your financial power of attorney.
Jay, this is the same process as we go to the lawyer for the will.
That's
same
100%
time.
yes.
Correct.
That is correct. Yeah, so here we go. I'm covering that off right now. So how to create it, same methods as a will. I really encourage folks, for powers of attorney, please just go to the lawyer. It's worth paying the money simply for the peace of mind. Okay, so a will, fine. You don't own a lot of assets. You don't have kids yet. I can see, all right, you want to go online and do it a little bit less expensively. But when it comes to the other stuff, you have children, you have assets, you want to have a financial power of attorney, a health, I certainly recommend going to a lawyer. Just a rough range. This might be a little higher, a little lower, but $2,000 to $4,000 for a family. So basically a couple, right? So each of you should have a will, by the way, and powers of attorney based on your own selections. So that's going to be a rough price. Again, might be a little more, might be a little less. But again, when we think about the value of our real estate portfolio, right, could stretch into the millions of dollars, then yeah, this is pretty small. This is a pretty small amount to pay overall when it comes to kind of that, just the peace of mind and eventually having protection, because you don't want someone you don't know making decisions for you when it comes to this stuff, right? So this is what will protect against it, is if you have a package of wills and a package of powers of attorney for your spouse and yourself. Encourage your adult children. If they have children, especially if you're a grandparent, encourage them to look at the same. once again, these are things that you can review every like 5 years, 10 years, etc. But get it started. Like I said, the day my son was born, pretty well immediately, we started down this process. So that's how you create it. And yes, it's just worth the peace of mind. So really, really important. I hope folks can understand and grasp that. So now let's talk about the next part is insurance. Now, obviously there are several different types of insurance, but for the purposes of our conversation, right? Like I'm gonna focus on life insurance. Again, I'm not an insurance broker or whatever, but I do have some pretty reasonable ideas about how to at least inform people. Life insurance, disability insurance, critical illness insurance, and we know there's all kinds of other insurances, right? Health-related insurance, property insurance, etc. We're not going to talk about those. We are going to focus on life insurance here. And once again, just like a lawyer, I'm a big believer, Ashton, in building your power team, right? Your power team are the group of experts that you surround yourself with, who when you pick up the phone and have a question that you need answered, they're the right people to answer it. Right? So I prefer all of my power team members to be real estate investors. Actually, I don't think I have a power team member that's not a real estate investor. And I'm talking about your lawyer, your accountant, your insurance rep, your inspector, your appraiser, your mortgage broker. These are all members of your real estate power team. And over time, you build up relationships. So I've had long-term relationships with all members of my power team. And basically, I know that they're in that business every day and they're doing what I want done. The one thing I will encourage you is don't go to Uncle Johnny just because he's your family member. He may not know what he's talking about. He may not be a real estate investor. He may not understand how to incorporate the whole real estate aspect into all of these things. So 100% pay a little extra, pay a little more for specialists, all right? So so an insurance broker, a reputable insurance broker that you can sit down, explain your family situation, and there's going to be factors all over the place, right? Different factors for different people. They'll be able to help you decide what is best for you. So let's get into a little bit of the insurance stuff, okay? So here's one where I said earlier, part of things I was prepared for, other parts I wasn't prepared for. And here is a very big mistake which I made. I did not have life insurance, a life insurance policy on my wife. Okay, so she was basically, I just told myself, I somehow had a conversation. There might be some people in the audience who have the same thing. I just convinced myself I didn't need it. Why spend the money on it? I don't really need it right now. So it was a big mistake because basically she was only 42 years old when she passed away, and she passed away suddenly. She passed away unexpectedly. So it was a huge shock, of course, but it's just one of those things where it's like any insurance. You hope you never need to use it. But if you do need it, at least it's there when it comes to any sort of insurance. So this was a big mistake I made. I'll certainly, hopefully that people learn from it. Now, on the one side of it also, I also owned real estate. So I always kind of had a mental aspect in my head that is kind of like my insurance policy. I had backup. And that's exactly how it ended up happening. So after my wife passed away, yeah, I had to make some moves. I had to basically cash in some real estate. You can see here, I ended up taking a 4-year sabbatical. And here are a bunch of checks from real estate transactions, whether they were sales or refinances, et cetera, totaling almost $700,000. Now, is that a $700,000 that I wanted to use up during those 4 years? No, not at all. But again, I needed time to just mourn. I needed time to help my children adjust. Like, you have to understand, that's a total new life paradigm, right? Everything changes when you are married versus now you're single and you have 3 children. Everything changed. So I just wanted to make sure I spent all the time necessary with my children. In order to do that, I needed obviously financial coverage. So I used my real estate portfolio. Okay. So again, in lieu of a real estate portfolio, I really should have had, not in lieu, along with the real estate portfolio, I should have had life insurance, but I didn't. Mistake, regret. But again, I share this with people so that they don't have to make the same mistake I did. So once again, however you do it, however you choose to do it, the lesson certainly here is please be prepared. Please understand that no one wants to go through these things, but life happens. Okay, life happens. Things happen in life unexpectedly. So you just got to be prepared. So this is, luckily I had real estate, so I was able to, you know, cash out a lot of it and live comfortably and be fine. So now let's continue on with our insurance. Okay, so two types of life insurance. Once again, I'm not an insurance broker, but you would take this information, you'll take some notes on it, and when you sit down with your insurance broker, you can have an intelligent conversation with him or her about your choices. So first one is whole life insurance, okay? So whole life, you're paying premiums, and literally it is planned to be for your whole life, right? Until the day you die, you're gonna be paying monthly premiums. Now, the good thing about whole life is that a portion of every monthly premium you pay, it goes towards what we'll call an ongoing investment, all right? The insurance company takes that money and they're actually going to invest it for you, right, in your name. So as you pay more and more premiums year after year after year, your investment portion of the whole life insurance policy, it grows. And as it gets big enough, it keeps growing and growing. Hopefully it's compounding. It gets to compound tax exempt, by the way. So it's quite nice. Eventually, when it gets big enough, there's certain policies out there that will let you borrow against it. You're going to be able to leverage against your life insurance policy. But just understand, it, like it says, it is for your whole life, okay? And it will compound, it will get bigger. And just like any sort of thing that's compounding, after you've been doing it for 20, 30, 40 years, you're going to see some really big, a really big portfolio building up, so that when, you know, eventually life does come to an end, you know, that is unfortunately one certainty for all of us. When life does come to an end, your family is going to be rewarded with a really healthy portfolio. So once again, you're going to sit down with your insurance broker and talk about the advantages and disadvantages for your situation when it comes to a whole life policy. And again, it's expected to be in place your entire life. So now, option number 2 for life insurance. Two types, and this is the one I had in place, but just for myself. You understand, I did not put a policy on my wife, never thought I needed it, but here's kind of the whole thing of term life. So term life, just as it suggests, is a life insurance policy for a fixed term. The term you can pick 5, 10, 20 years, what have you. Now, what is kind of the whole reason for a term policy? Now, in my situation, I'll just go back personally here. I was the main income earner for my family, right? My wife was super busy at home, 3 kids, looking after children, looking after household. So she did not work outside the home. She was busy enough inside the home. So that's why I had a policy on myself. If something happened to me, then at least there would have been money available to her and my kids. Didn't unfortunately work in reverse. So if you're the main income earner, you have younger children, I think a term life policy is the one I selected. It was pretty good. I selected a 20-year term because my kids were young. So I wanted to make sure that I had it in place just in case something happens to me. So you're going to pay premiums every month of the term. But then once the term is over, the policy is finished. You can probably do another one, etc. But there's no buildup and there's no compounding. There's no investment portion like a whole life. All right. So the policy is a fixed amount. Like let's say it's a $500,000 term life policy for a fixed number of years. Here's the premium you're going to pay every month. You pay that premium every month. There's no investment component whatsoever. So this, again, it's very useful when you're a little bit younger, if you have younger children, you're the main income winner. Whether you have real estate or not, I don't think matters as much. That might just determine how much coverage you want, if you want to pay off mortgages, etc. And we'll get into that a little bit. So term life, that's exactly kind of what it is. So now a question I often get, and now I'm just going to give you my rule of thumb. I'm fairly certain that insurance brokers might have a different way of calculating this, but I just want to give you some ideas so that, you know, the audience can understand, here's what I would look at when it comes to total insurance coverage that I would need. Okay, so again, I'm just going to get, and yes, different answers for sure based on circumstances, all right? Circumstances, everyone is different. Maybe you have 2 income earners, maybe you own a lot of real estate, a little real estate, etc. So this is where you must sit down with a broker. But here, I'll just give you kind of some basics, all right? So the questions you need to ask yourself when it comes to coverage. Am I my family's main income earner, right? How many children do I have? How old are they? How much mortgage debt and liabilities do I have, all right? That's a big problem when people pass away unexpectedly and they have a lot of debt, then unfortunately you got to sell assets in order to satisfy those debts. Whereas if you have enough insurance coverage, you can get insurance proceeds to satisfy those debts and your family can keep their assets. So that's where that is very important. And how much does it cost my family to kind of live every year? So we're going to dig into an example once again, just circumstances which I picked out. All right, so again, my business's name is Prepared Fathers. So for the moms out there, I'm sorry, but this is a father. So a family is the father is the family's sole income earner. All right, spouse is 40 years old. They have 2 children, 5 and 10 years old. It costs them 60. I know this number might be based on where your audience is living. This number could be small, it might be high, whatever. We just picked a number, 60,000 a year in living expenses, 5,000 a month. Okay, again, it could be 8,000 a month, it might be 3,000 a month, but we picked a number of 60,000 a year. And in the investments, you basically have real estate properties with mortgages totaling approximately $1 million. So here's how I would go about getting coverage. Once again, you're going to take these as ideas. And when you sit down with your insurance broker, they can hone in a little bit more. All right. So first of all, total insurance needed. So the 60K living expenses, your spouse is 40 years old. So basically I said, how much money would my spouse need to live until like 65, when other things might kick in? You might be able to sell, or she might be able to sell some real estate, might be able to get some government pensions, etc. So 60K living expenses, and let's say she was 40 years old till 65, there's 25 years. So there's 1.5 million of coverage you need. We want to be able to pay off all the mortgages in case something happens to the father, who's the main income earner. So there's another $1 million a year to pay off the mortgages. Now this again is a rough number. I estimate 10K per year per child until they're 21. So what do we have? We have 2 children, right? One was 5 years old. So from 5, by the time they reach 21, that's 16 more years. Give them 10K a year, that's 160. Child number 2 is 10 years old. They have 11 years until 21. There's 10K, that's 110,000. So roughly when I sit down with my insurance broker and they're gonna say, like they're gonna go over these scenarios, I would estimate I need somewhere in the neighborhood of $2.83 million, if you wanna round it up, of insurance coverage in my life insurance. Now again, that's given those circumstances. Now, if both spouses are working or you don't have as many mortgage or as much mortgage debt, et cetera, these numbers will change. Maybe you only have 1 child instead of 2, but that just gives you an idea of how I go about calculating it. And once again, this is completely my rule of thumb. All right. So I haven't sat down with insurance brokers and talked this through in depth, but when you do, at least you have an idea of the things that you want covered off. Okay. So, and now again, I will certainly harp on this. Please, please, please sit with a reputable insurance broker. Reputable? Okay, so they've been in business a long time. That's usually a great sign. You can obviously look at reviews, right? Google reviews, peer-to-peer reviews, referrals of someone you trust and respect who they use. These are the ways that you want to find someone reputable, like any professional that you're going to add to your team. So again, reputable insurance broker, because your family will have specific needs and policy requirements based on your own circumstances. So once again, I will encourage you, take these steps now. There's no point in missing out. There's no point in not doing it and then being like regretful later on, right? This is a little bit of preparedness, right? So we want to be prepared rather than feel regret later. So these type of things are what you will do. Once again, oh yes, okay. This, by the way, Ashton, it's just a free guide for your audience. Okay, again, my business is called Prepared Fathers. So the title of the guide is The Ultimate Guide to Financial Preparation for Fathers. Of course, moms, of course, you can download it yourself as well. We will pass the link in the chat just in a second here. So all they'd have to do is go to that link and they can download it. It'll talk a little bit more about, you know, your wills. So it's about conversations, assets, and paperwork. So it talks a little bit more in depth about what we've talked about here tonight, but at least it's something your audience can take home and they can simply take a look at and get them more thinking about what it is that we've talked about here today.
Jay, do you have a phone number the audience can contact you? Is that the same number?
Yes, let's see here. Is there another slide here? I guess there isn't. Let me just go to escape and let's see what we got. Okay, yeah, that's fine. How about an email address, Ashton? That would be great. I'm sorry, for some reason my assistant did not put it here, even though I asked her to. No big deal. It's jay@preparedfathers.com. If the audience is ultimately interested, what I do with Prepared Fathers is I do quite a bit of coaching, not just on this stuff, more so on real estate investing and selling put options and private mortgage lending. Basically, for people who want to really grow their portfolio and diversify it, a lot of times they may not have the experience. These are all things which I've done with quite a bit of depth over time. And that's what I coach people on. So again, if they want to reach out to me, it's jay@preparedfathers.com. And once again, let's just see if I can get you this.
So the email is jay@preparedfather.
Preparedfathers.com.
Fathers with S?
Yeah, fathers with an S. Let me just see if I can drop this link in chat. Yeah, there's that. And let's see if I can do this here. Paste, enter. Okay. And Ashton, for the folks who want to download the guide, if they just take a look at the chat, I've put the link that they go to. If they can click on that link, they can go to this page, just give their email address and they can download the guide. It's my gift to them. And that's basically it. So hopefully our audience got quite a bit out of it. And once again, my last message is simply, I encourage you all to build your real estate portfolios, and I encourage you all to get prepared so that you protect what you've built and what you're going to be building.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jay. It was amazing story that we heard. It's always good to be encouraged and challenged also in real estate investment. And as you properly said, there are challenges along the way as we go. It happened to me, it happened to you, it happens to all the real estate investors. Please do not look at these safe and quiet and nice and rosy situations. These kind of things can happen, and hopefully it doesn't. But there is a there is a learning curve that we all have to go through it. My real estate investment story is not very flat and rosy, but I had all my own challenges as well in terms of learning. And it was great to have you, Jay, over, and hopefully we can have you back and help us and give us some of your insight.
Certainly. Thanks very much, Ashton, for having me on. And again, kudos to you for basically inviting guests on and helping your audience. I hope the audience appreciates what you're doing for them. And yeah, great to be with you. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Hello, this is Ashton Ekbatani, and if you enjoy the content of this video, please subscribe below so you can get any new videos that is coming up all the time, and I hope you enjoy it. Take care.